Thanks for accepting my deputation. Okay, I'm going to read it. It's about 12 minutes. First, let me say for the record that I support street checks as an investigative and intelligence gathering tool. However, the September 2015 street checks overview presented to the board, plus a year's worth of freedom of information, confirmed that Peel Police can't be trusted to conduct them. I suspect that must come as quite a shock, given that Toronto Sun's Joe Warmington quoted your former board chair, Laurie Williamson, as declaring Peel Police the best police service in the world with the best officers. So that makes me someone who supports street checks, but doesn't trust the best police service in the world with the best officers with this practice. Regarding street checks, many people, including me, are grateful to Mayors Crombie and Jeffrey for the concern they've shown surrounding the controversial practice of carding. The June 12, 2015 Peel Police Services Board meeting minutes record the Crombie-Jeffrey street check resolution as. Therefore, be it resolved that the Peel Police Services Board, the board, calls for a full review of street checking practices by the Peel Regional Police, PRP. The fact is, Peel Police themselves admitted right in the street check process, the very report to the board, that it actually wasn't a full review. Under background, page 3, Peel Police write, quote, "This board report serves to provide an overview of the street check process currently operational within Peel Regional Police," unquote. And under conclusion, the very last sentence reads, quote, "This report serves as an overview of the street check process currently in operation at the Peel Regional Police." Overview. An overview is not a full review. Reminder of what the board directed Peel Police do. Therefore, be it resolved that the Peel Police Services Board calls for a full review of street checking practices by the Peel Regional Police. The Police Services Act, Part 4, under duties of Chief of Police states, Chief of Police reports to Board. 2. The Chief of Police reports to the Board and shall obey its lawful orders and directions. Video of the June 12, 2015 board meeting, plus the minutes, make the board's directions clear. Full review of street checking practices by the Peel Regional Police. The street check process report, twice admitting that it provided an overview, confirms that the chief did not obey the board's directions. So I call for the board to commit to a full review of Peel Police street checking practices that Peel Police failed to provide, and enlist authentic citizen volunteer participation to that end, especially from the Black community, please. As for the September 25, 2015 street check process just being an overview, recent Freedom of Information documents confirm that the board didn't even get an adequate overview of Peel Police street check practices. And you needn't take my word. The street check process overview admits its own failings and inaccuracies. On page 7, the report states, quote, "It is important to note that the Airport Division accounted for 36% of all street check forms. The majority of these checks relate to airport scoopers," unquote. 36% street checks from airport is more than the combined total of 34% from 12 and 22 divisions, Peel's two busiest public divisions. Including airport in with the public division street check data is bad science. Airport's 36% can't help but taint Peel Police's overall street check race data. It's just that we don't know to what extent. Now, Peel Police would never admit to garbage in, garbage out. Rather, their street check process offered, quote, "To accurately reflect street check submissions, a separate process is now used to monitor airport scooters," unquote. So Peel Police knew that their report did not accurately reflect what was actually happening with street checks. A more truthful statement would have been, because of the whopping 36% airport weighting that we could have highlighted separately but didn't, our overview report does not accurately reflect the race data the board directed us to provide in their call for a full review. Another Another concern draws into question the impact of including, and sometimes not including, no race in the report's race calculations. No race. The intriguing Peel Police street check category, no race, demands a deputation all on its own. Quick example, Ottawa Police did not include their 10% undetermined in with their race calculations. Peel Police at 22.5% no race did. In fact, Peel Police managed to grant no race actual race status. Try to find, sorry. Yeah. And then there's a major and telling omission. Try to find a reference to youth anywhere in either the PowerPoint analysis of street checks 2009 to 2014 or street checks process. Youth. Because you can't. The September 2015 street checks process showed absolutely no sense of duty, no concern in monitoring the street check database to gauge the fate of youth in Peel. Peel Police make this admission in their overview. Quote, currently there is no mandatory requirement necessitating regular review and audit of street check forms within the system, unquote. It is both alarming and damning that former Chair Williamson's best police service in the world with the best officers would need mandatory requirements to monitor street checks in order to proactively detect for early signs of policing bias and anti-black racism in particular. Now, there are other inadequacies, failed to mention and methodology errors in street check process, but now's not the time. I have to get to the ask. Regarding the ask, right after the June 12, 2015 Peel Police Services Board meeting, I filed Freedom of Information, requesting state race stats, ethnicity, complexion for all Peel Police street checks, 2008 to current.
Madam, you have 2 more minutes to wrap up, please.
Okay? Requesting race stats, ethnicity, complexion for all Peel Police street checks for those under 18, 2008 to current. Then in October, I submitted a follow-up street check youth-related Freedom of Information request. Printout as an attached example of street checks contacts by race for those under 18 listed from age 8 through age 17 for years 2008 through 2015. Peel Police ran that October query and presented me with a bill for $600. This FOI is now on hold. Having attended the B.J. Sandhu versus Peel Police Human Rights Tribunal hearings, I now know that all 3 sets of my Peel Police street check race data are fatally flawed because of the Behemoth Red Herring Airport Division polluting the picture. These are recommendations that I have. I'm urging that the Peel Police Services Board release a $600 youth street check Freedom of Information currently held by Peel Police. That youth-specific street check FOI still contains data important for comparison to a November 2012 Peel Police Young Offenders FOI that I filed. 2, the Peel Police Services Board direct Peel Police to provide all raw data used in the preparation of analysis of street checks 2009 to 2014, that's the PowerPoint presentation, and street checks processed, the written overview. 3, that the Peel Police Services Board authorize reruns of my flawed 2015 Freedom of Information street check data, this time separate printouts by division. The Peel Police Services Board commit to a full review of street check practices by Peel Police by providing the necessary raw data in 1 and 2, reruns secured through Freedom of Information 3, and make these data public. The Peel Police Services Board invite authentic citizen volunteer participation, especially from the Black community, to examine and analyze Peel Police and my existing and revised Freedom of Information raw data. And last, that the Peel Police Services Board really ponder the implications of 27% Black dropping to 21% Black when Peel Police added their race of no race to their street check calculations. In summary, I commit to releasing all Peel Police street check data already secured through Freedom of Information and through successful appeals with the Information and Privacy Commission, and hopefully new ones. And last, actually second last, I also commit to providing Mayors Crombie, Jeffrey, and the board with the full review of street checking practices by the Peel Regional Police, pending successful resolution of the 2 appeals with the IPC. And last, thank you for listening and giving me the extra time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any comments or questions? Thank you very much. All right, we got a break for lunch. Oh,
Okay, just before we go in camera,
yeah.
I just wanted to raise a question that has been kind of percolating since the morning deputations. So I know we've moved away from street checks because we're under new policy according to the provincial government, but will we be tracking statistics as we have been in the past going forward as well?
As per the regulation, there's a annual reporting, so that we will be doing that as well.
And could you, or maybe later, or whatever, is this, Ms. Kuiper-Bennett talked about the no race. How does that get factored in with Ottawa using undetermined? They didn't include it, whereas we use no race and did include it.
I can't speak to what Ottawa were doing. I can tell you that we identified that officers were selecting no race.
Right.
Sometimes
It's still, I'm sure it's hard to tell.
No, sometimes people were actually submitting a street check or on luggage found or a vehicle, so that's often there was no race because it wasn't a person. But we eliminated that electronically from the system, so they were no longer able to choose that.
And what about the information about the airport kind of, disproportionately changing the outcome? Is there any merit in that?
No, I believe the comment was that they had found another way. So the GTAA were concerned that they were hiring pay-duty officers to look at illegal scoopers picking up fares at the airport. So the officers were using the street check form to document them for tracking them. Now they're tracking them in another way, but it's not in any form of street check.
Right. And did we ever break them down by division?
Yes, we did.
Oh, and may we see that at some point?
I believe you have seen them at some point. But,
Okay. I'd like to see that again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think the data that we will get under the new regulation is quite a bit more sophisticated. And
Good.
I want the old stuff.
And the last comment I think was about youth and how many youth were versus under 18 versus adults. Do we know that number?
So that was an inquiry that was made, I believe, through an FOI request from Ms. Kuiper-Bennett. And that's an analysis that we would have to do. So I believe, I'm not sure if there was a charge contributed to that. I would check into that. But that's an analysis we would do to do that. So.
Oh, okay. And it's not anything we've undertaken? We want to know what proportion of our street checks were youth under 18?
I'm not sure if that was undertaken. I can find out if we
identify.
I said,
I would
have to get back to you on that.
They couldn't give us a crap.
By division information.
Thank you.
You're talking, Madam Mayor, you're talking about the statistics from what year?
What was it, 09 to 2015, I guess? So
Close.
the legislation changed.
Close.
Whatever you had presented to us before that same period of time.
Okay.
Thank you.
She gets it.
All right. Nothing else? So we
She gets it.
notice to adjourn. Okay, we are adjourned for lunch. Our meeting convened at 1 o'clock. So welcome, Mr. Singh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Board. Good morning, Chief. I'm joined here by Mr. Howard Morton, who will be assisting me with my presentation. I am Mia Singh, Community Liaison from the African Canadian Coalition of Community Organizations. I'm also the co-founder of the Osgood Society Against Institutional Injustice and the senior advisor to that group. Good morning, Mayor Crombie and Mayor Jeffrey. Today, I made my way here because it's very important, as you said, Mr. Chair, that the community provide input, especially on policing issues and especially in today's climate and the issue of carding, street checks, arbitrary detention. And I feel as a citizen of the GTA, born Canadian, that it's also my duty to assist government, police, and any other agencies that have to provide safety to the community and work with the community to be someone that can be a liaison, a voice of reason, someone that can assist in the whole process. I first want to start off by complimenting the Peel Police Board for the tremendous progress that I've seen in the past year and a half. I think it takes a lot of courage. I know that the force has been under pressure, and I know there's historical issues that have tainted some of the relations between the community and the police. But as someone that has been working hard on this issue, I do recognize that it takes a lot of courage to make progress, and I do want to acknowledge that you have and commend you for it. I will also say that I've had recent interactions with Peel Police concerning issues, and I've had very good response and service from them, which makes me fortunate and hopeful that it continues. Although I say that, I do have to acknowledge there are also many stories and interactions that I hear that are not so positive and that are not so helpful to community and the way of building community trust. So as an organization and as a community, I think together we can ensure that going forward, negative experiences decline and positive ones increase. First, I want to talk about the new carding regulations that were put into place that take effect on January 1st, 2017. I'm not aware of any draft policy that the Peel Police Board has put forward for public review, but I would advise, if there is a policy being worked on, please contact community members, professionals, legal professionals, and myself, and I'm sure Howard would make ourselves available to assist if there's any input required. The reason why I say this is because in Toronto, the community input and legal input has been very helpful in crafting a policy that meets the needs of both the police to ensure their duties as police officers, and also that citizens' rights are protected under the Charter and all of our laws. Three major points about the policy that I asked the board to consider, Mr. Chair, is that there's rights notification that is paramount when it comes to these interactions. Basically, any stop by police on an individual, if it is premised with a notification of rights, that if it's not a criminal investigation, that this is a voluntary interaction, that you do not have to provide information, and you have the right to leave, that would alleviate all charter concerns. Because otherwise, if someone is being held against their will, they're being detained. And if they're detained, charter rights are triggered. And if that person is not under any criminal investigation, or they're not informed of their rights, the police service could be liable for any type of racial profiling, charter breaches. And I know that the board and the service does not want that to happen. So rights notification is paramount for any interaction with police and a civilian. Next is the issuing of a receipt. There is a mandate by the regulations to provide receipts. Now, the form of this receipt is up to the board, and I implore the board to take a look at the Toronto policy to see what additional information they've included in their receipt notification, and also implore the board to consider a carbon copy receipt. This way, you can monitor police behavior, and the person who is stopped has a copy of the interaction that took place. Without this form of carbon copy receipt, we could get into a situation where information is not consistent between the officer and the individual stopped. So that's a second recommendation to take a look at very carefully. And third is the legacy data, the historical data that is being kept on all these carding interactions. Now, myself, I have been carded 11 times, stopped over 30 times. I haven't investigated the times I've been stopped in Peel, but I know I have been. Now, this data, for it to remain when it was collected illegally for one, and for two, the fact that it starts to create an impression of a person's identity without any criminal context is very concerning to the public. And this data, the public believes and legal professionals believe, it should be destroyed. However, there is a caveat, and the caveat is, a person like me who's launching civil litigation, if that data was destroyed, I would not be able to access that data for the purpose of a court hearing, and the police board themselves, the service, could be liable for destroying data that a civilian or citizen may need in order to do a civil suit. So the compromise being suggested by community members, or by myself, I'll say, is that this data be restricted, not accessed, and only accessible by the individual whose data has been collected themselves. Now, the Toronto Police have put forth in their policy that the data will be restricted only to the police and will only be called upon in extreme circumstances where the police provides authorization. However, still believe that that is still an affront to justice. It's using data that was illegally obtained, and it could have very negative repercussions and open up the board and the service to liability. Those are my comments. I know how Mr. Morton has to take this.
Have I done this right? Thanks. If I could just address one of the submissions you will hear, if you have not already heard, from police authorities with respect to the new regulation and in particular the data. One of the arguments frequently made, I believe in Peel by your chief and others, is that getting rid of street checks, which has already happened hopefully, and maintaining the new regulation is going to present a danger to the public because it is going to interfere with the police ability to investigate crime. Actually, the opposite is true. And I appreciate that at first blush that sounds foolish. Here's why it's actually putting Peel residents in danger. You're aware, as I am, that take any particular crime that occurs, a shooting at 10 o'clock at night. 20 or so people witness parts of the shooting or have information they could give to the police in assisting their investigation. When the police arrived, nobody saw anything, nobody has anything to say. Fear of retribution may well be a major reason for the public's reluctance to assist the police, but the total lack of trust in communities brought about by street checks, or carding as it's called in Toronto, and by the retention of this data and access to it historically as we go forward, is a major cause of mistrust and a reluctance on the part of members of the community to assist the police. So the bad guys who did the shooting, the investigation is stymied for one reason or another, including none of the witnesses came forward. The bad guy is still out there and the public are at risk. So when you're considering the police position that if you follow the reg and order that historical data be destroyed, you're going to put the public at risk, please consider the converse of how the public are now at risk because of the lack of trust caused by street checks.
Mr. Singh and Ms. Morton, we have 1 minute if you want to wrap it up.
Okay.
That shows how interested they are in carding. Wow.
Mr. Morton will address briefly the external equity audit that we also implore the board to keep undertaking. But I did want to actually talk about the atmosphere in Peel on the board and with the police service. From my impression, everyone here has the will to do right and wants a safe community. But from my understanding and from reports I'm receiving and hearing, there is tension between board members, service members, and the chair himself. And I just want to say, I think that it's very important that everyone works together. I don't think anybody here has ill intent. I know we're all coming from different positions, different backgrounds, and different experiences. But we have to put those aside because community safety is of utmost importance. And respect to the chair should always be given. And respect for senior officers should always be given. So without going too far into that, I just want to remind the board and even members of the board that may be leaving, it's disappointing if they were to leave because there's so much information that this board has brought together and moved progressively towards.
Thank you. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Really appreciate it.
Any questions or comments?
I just want to thank you for your deputation, and it was very worthwhile, and I think we all learned something from you. A question on the retention of the data. I think the regulation says that we can retain it for 5 years, is that correct?
No, it's permanent.
5 years?
It's restricted after 5 years.
It's restricted after 5 years. So is your comment, are you asking us to allow access after 5 years, or even the current data that is involved? The current data will be grandfathered and be restricted, I believe, right?
Yeah, I'm asking that the board restrict the data immediately.
Immediately?
Yeah, because that's at the discretion of the board.
And that the individual also have access to it so they understand what is on their file.
Definitely. The reason for not asking for a complete deletion of the data is in case that individual wants to launch a claim, and if the board deletes it, then they'll be liable. So restrictable only to that individual.
And I think this is a worthwhile conversation for the board and the chief to have. So we're not making any commitments, but certainly we've heard, and we will be having that conversation going forward. And with respect to the equity audit, I mean, of course, we passed the motion, we do intend to proceed.
Yes, I guess we put that on because
I
our
understand.
understanding is there's a
Hiring program being suggested by the chief. And I guess we just wanted to make sure that that is not being considered as an external equity audit, but that the board is going forward with its earlier position.
Right, well, the equity audit we were describing was far more sweeping than just on hiring process. So yeah, so there's lots we can learn.
Thank you.
I too wanted to thank you for your thoughtful presentation, and I think you raised some very interesting components to how we move forward with street checks and the regulations that the chief has. I think she's done the initial run at it, but I think we certainly appreciate your advice as to how to make how the data is collected. That particularly is of interest to me, and the issuing of a receipt is very is interesting as well. I haven't heard that particular recommendation be made, so I think that you offered us a lot to think about as a board, and I appreciate your advice today. Will you be submitting something in writing to this board rather than just a deputation on your 3 recommendations for review?
Yes, I can. I will.
I guess I would like to say thank you for your initial comments. It has been a challenging 2 years, and certainly we've come a long way, and I think community safety is paramount for this board, and I appreciate your advice and your thoughtful recommendations. And we will be continuing. My understanding with the equity audit is that our new executive director is in the process of looking at individuals who are qualified to do the audit. At this point, he's relatively new to the job, so my understanding is we'll be getting some information about those who are qualified to do the job in the coming weeks, and we'll be making a decision as a board.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Chief, you have a comment?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, just I was confused by the hiring program that's being suggested that I'm running, so I'm not aware of any new hiring program, so just thought I would put that out there. I would encourage Mr. Singh and Mr. Morton to stay for the results of our community survey that are going to be announced very shortly. So we've hired an external company, PRA Incorporated. Mr. Kerry Dangerfield is going to be presenting. So, and today we're revealing statistics that'll say our community satisfaction remains high at 93%. Every year, every 3 years, we do a strategic plan. We do a community survey to find out what the community wants from our police service, how we are being rated. So today, and I'll give you some copies to take with you. So 93% of our residents are satisfied with the work of Peel Region Police. This is a 6% jump since 2013. 92% say we are professional, 91% say we're courteous, 90% say we treat people with respect, 90% say we are knowledgeable and competent, and the numbers go on. And to Mr. Howard Morton's point about the cooperation to solve a crime, I have been concerned, and I've been discussing the crime trends recently with the board, with the increase in shootings and the increase in stabbings, but the comment you made about the fact that people are refusing to cooperate with police because of the lack of trust between our community and Peel Region Police, I think the statistics will show today that that's incorrect. That overall residents and businesses indicated that they are willing to cooperate with Peel Region Police to solve a crime. They're at 96%, so I can give you these documents to stay, or I encourage you to stay for the presentation. So I'm very pleased by the community results, of what the community is telling us on how we are working with the community. Is there room for improvement? Absolutely, there always is, so thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, and I do remember that you committed to me last year to have a community forum where the youth that we're in touch with address the Peel Police, and I do appreciate your statistics, those are great numbers. However, I think probably there's a huge portion of the community that hasn't been consulted, and the numbers, unfortunately, will probably be very different, but my schedule's been very busy, and I will take you up on that offer to have a community forum, and hopefully in the new year, we can do that so we can also get a reflection from another portion of our community that is served by the police.
And Madam Mayor, I just wanted to remind you, since April 20th, the Peel Region Police have implemented the new regulation guidelines, and we actually have a document as outlined by the ministry that we give to people when we are going to collect identifying information. So, and that has been issued out and discussed in previous meetings, but I brought copies with me today so the board can refresh the memory with those as well. So, thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you for reminding us. So there's a receipt issued currently today with already ahead of the scheduled introduction.
That's correct. It says April 20th. We are now collecting identifying information as per the regulation that comes effective January 1st. So Peel Region Police are the first police service. We issue a document. It's referred to as a document, not really a receipt. And on the back it talks about information with respect to the Office of the Independent Review Director to make a complaint, or they can access information on the Municipal Freedom of Information Act. It outlines the officer's name, the date, location where the stop occurred, so this person would be given this document.
I also asked, the deputy asked whether, or it suggested, recommended that there be rights notification. Is that currently being done as well?
That's correct, it is.
So they're notified, they don't have to give the information if they don't.
Yes, that's the very first thing the officers say to them is, you don't have to talk to me. And the rights notification goes on. And I say, and also we've added to our website, Know Your Rights. We've obtained permission from the Civil Liberties Association that we could create a link from Peel Regional Police website directly to their website so people can jump on and know their rights. And we've been advertising that as well.
And then the final question would be, does the individual have access to their phone?
Yes, anyone can make a freedom of information request for $5 and get access to that information.
Is that what this deputy was recommending, that for freedom of information you had access to your file?
Yes, it's a little bit outside the freedom of information. It's more a fact that the data would be restricted, nobody could access it, and only if they want to launch a civil suit or actually examine information they will do. So yes, it's under freedom of information, but in a different vein than it's currently used right now. Because the freedom of information that people access currently is still accessible by the police. In the new form that we're proposing, it wouldn't be accessible by the police, only that individual for their own purpose.
So, but currently, I believe the recommendation is that that be true after 5 years, is that correct? And is that true of the historical data?
So the regulation states that the documentation, the information would be restricted after 5 years. So currently, Peel Regional Police, we have committed to the board earlier this year that we would go back in time and we would restrict data. So we have been doing that since November 1st. So far, we have restricted over 24,000 documents, and we still have 74,469 street check records to restrict. We are in the process, and we will be compliant by December 31st. If you're January 1st, we will be compliant.
And so only the chief can access after 5 years, unless there's a freedom of information, unless the individual can access their information.
That's correct.
If I could just say, it all depends what you mean, or what the chief means by restricted. Restricted implies that there are exceptions, going to be exceptions to the rule. And I think the board has to be careful that the board delineates precisely what those exceptions are, and I suggest they should be very narrow. And secondly, that whenever an exception is employed by the chief or by an officer, that there be some sort of written report, not interfering with ongoing investigations, but some written report to the board or the chair indicating that on such and such a date, such and such was done and access to that historical.
Okay, thank you very much. We have a long agenda today, so what I would suggest is, if you have specific suggestions, we welcome. Send them in an email to us as we are developing some of these policies. And
Just make a concluding comment based on the comment. So are there exceptions, Chief, where anyone else can access the data after 5 years?
Linda, do you want to assist with the
Well, the
regulation?
regulation speaks to it, so right now we have to be compliant with the regulations.
So when we look to the board policy and we will listen to, what your direction will be, at the end of the day, it has to be compliant with the regulations. So we look forward to reviewing that with you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I don't mean to take more time than needed, but it is a conversation that I think the board should have.
absolutely, and we're going to do it. And the Vice Chair is spearheading this effort. And again, it's the regulation, the policy, the procedures. They all have to be in tandem. And we are making sure that, and we are ahead of the back, and we make sure that some of the input is taken into account, and we fine tune it, and we'll keep doing it as we go along. So, thank you very much, gentlemen. Appreciate you coming down.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Board.
Okay, seconded by all in favor?
For the record, my request for 15 minutes for this Peel Police Street Check Race Statistics deputation was dismissed, quote, "In accordance with the board's procedure policy, you will be provided with 10 minutes for your deputation. The board will not be extending this time," unquote. So I have to make this fast. The record shows that I ended my September 23rd, 2016 Peel Police Carding Race Statistics deputation with, "I commit to releasing all Peel Police Street Check data already secured through Freedom of Information and through successful appeals with the Information and Privacy Commission, and hopefully future ones. I also commit to providing Mayors Crombie, Jeffrey, and the board with, quote, a full review of street checking practices by the Peel Regional Police, unquote, pending successful resolution of 2 appeals with the IPC. It will soon be 3 appeals. The purpose of this deputation is to secure the final Peel Police PRP 17 street check data that Mayor Crombie requested at my September 23rd, 2016 deputation. As you know, I document these board meetings with video, so the quotes I'll use are transcribed from those recordings. Referring to race statistics, Mayor Crombie asked Chief Evans for a breakdown by division. Mayor Crombie: right. And did we ever break them down by division? Chief Evans: yes, we did. Crombie: oh, and may we see that at some point? Evans: yes, we have seen them at some point, but. Crombie: okay, I'd like to see that, thank you. And bless Mayor Crombie for this. I'm so grateful for her caring about youth. She also asked for street check PRP 17 breakdown of race for those under 18 by division. Here's that exchange. Mayor Crombie: and the last comment I think was about youth and how many youth were versus under 18 versus, do we have that number? Chief Evans: that was an inquiry that I believe was made through an FOI request with Ms. Cooper-Bennett, and that's the analysis we would have to do. But I believe, I'm not sure if there was a charge, inaudible, to that. I would have to check into that. That's an analysis we would do to do that. So, Crombie: oh, okay. And it's not anything we've undertaken. We want to know what proportion of our street checks were youth under 18 or inaudible. Evans: I'm not sure if that was undertaken. I can find out. And then it's inaudible because Chief Evans, Mayor Crombie, and me are talking all at once. I'll have to get back to you on that. Crombie: by division information. Evans: you're talking, Madam Mayor, you're talking about the statistics from what year? Crombie, what was it? 09 to 2015, I guess? Whatever you have presented to us before, that same period of time. Again, that was in September. On November 3rd, however, Freedom of Information arrived that confirms Street Check PRP 17 breakdown of race by division is not the way to go. By division turns out to be a September red herring. When the Information and Privacy Commissioner secured more Peel Police Street Check race stat documents in November, the game changed. Among the records was a September 24, 2015 email from Peel Police Assistant Manager of Criminal Intelligence Analysis, Raphael Jabady, to Inspector Ingrid Berkeley-Brown, who was responsible for the street check report and presented it to the board the very next day. Jabady's September 24th email contained a chart showing, quote, statistics on contacts by race for hotspots patrol zones 2009 to 2014, unquote. Jabady's patrol zone street check race information was not shared with the board or at any of the Brampton, Mississauga street check public consultations. Again, being pressed for time, I can't go into detail and can only highlight one patrol zone. A graph from Jabady's email shows that for patrol zone 21130 Malton, 51.4% of those carded from 2009 to 2014 were black, or 46.6% black using Jabady's Peel Police calculator. 51.4% black, 1 out of every 2 PRP 17s. And since 51% is an average, some years will be less, some more. So to return to Mayor Crombie's September 2016 request for race data, I will speak on behalf of my mayor and say that she will no longer benefit from breakdown by division. Instead, Mayor Crombie needs September 24, 2015 statistics on contacts by race for hotspot patrol zones 2009 to 2014 by each year with a tweak. I request that patrol zones 11120, 11130, 11340, and 11410 be added to Jabady's contacts by race for hotspots patrol zones chart. So, for 2009, 2010, 2011, 12, 13, 14, and then ending August 31st, 2015. All ages, please. And to address Mayor Crombie's commitment to Peel youth, she'll need the same statistics on contacts by race for hotspot patrol zones run for those ages under 18. And please provide these data on an Excel spreadsheet so Mayor Crombie and I won't have to transfer all those stats out from paper the way that I had to back in November. I mentioned a tweak. I urge that statistics on contacts by race for hotspot patrol zones extend prior to Mayor Crombie's beginning year of 2009. Here's why. I've been filing Freedom of Information since January 2007. In 2012, I finally secured a copy of the City of Mississauga Corporate Securities, that's MISCorpSec for short, electronic database. Although former Mayor Hazel McCallion denied that the city kept ethnicity records, the database includes a field called complexion. Using this field to analyze MISCorpSec's 2006 through 2012 database turns up troubling statistics. For example, the data showed that from 2006 to 2012, almost 60%, 59.5% of all loitering bans and arrests were issued to black West Indian. Of greater significance, however, was a discovery that no one had ever monitored the City of Mississauga corporate security database throughout that time. If Peel Police's statistics on contact by race for hotspot patrol zones were also run for 2006, 2007, and 2008, we could compare race complexion stats between City of Mississauga corporate security's 2006 to 2012 database and the patrol zone race stats for Peel Police during those years. And that's right down to no race. Finally, I'd like to remind the board that carding has a profound effect on the black community. Recall that for Patrol Zone 21130 Malton, 51.4% of those carded from 2009 to 2014 were black. And that statistic was withheld from the black community and the board. And let's face it, Peel Police never once considered that these Freedom of Information records are black history, the history of the black community in Peel. Since it will be February in 4 days and February is Black History Month, and since carding affects the black community more profoundly than any other, I request that Peel Police provide Mayor Crombie, the board, the black community, and me with Peel Police Patrol Zone contacts by race, as I detailed earlier, by Wednesday, February 15th, 2017. And to repeat, I commit to releasing all Peel Police street check data already secured through Freedom of Information, and also commit to providing Mayors Crombie, Jeffrey, and the board with a full review of street checking practices by the regional police. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Chief? Any comments or questions? All right, received deputation.
No questions, no comments.
Second by all in favor? Accepted. Thank you very much. Presentation is Special Olympic We will now move into deputations. A reminder that deputations will be limited to 10 minutes, and I will let you know when there is about a minute to go so that you can wrap up. The first deputation is Ms. Ursula Cooper Bennett of Mississauga Watch. Welcome back, Ms. Cooper Bennett.
I've practiced this, and this takes about 10 and a half minutes. I'm back again to try to secure the Peel Police 2009 to 2014 street check raw race data by division that I and Mayor Crombie asked for back in September, as well as the patrol zone raw race data that I requested in January 2017 to be released for Black History Month. The focus of today's deputation is how easily hashtag alternative stats can create hashtag fake news, even in the most reputable of news sources. By example, Toronto Star's August 24th, 2015, Peel Police conducted 159,303 street checks in 6 years by San Greywall. Regarding Peel Police carding statistics, Greywall wrote, quote, "The Peel data obtained through a Freedom of Information request by the Star suggests street checks were far less common in Peel than carding it was in Toronto prior to 2014, before it became a major issue. But the Peel rate has been much higher than Toronto's since the controversy led to a dramatic curtailment in carding last year," unquote. So what we have here is Peel Police carding data compared with that of Toronto Police. How can anyone compare Peel Police street check data with Toronto? Toronto Police don't have the largest airport in Canada as a division, forming a whopping 36% of their street check race statistics. Street checks less common in Peel until 2013, higher than Toronto since then, intriguing. But it's the gobsmacking massive increase in the Peel Police blank race data that demands scrutiny. Blank race data are records where, to use Peel Police's own words, quote, "a person's race was not recorded," unquote. Freedom of Information confirms that and now these are percentages rounded off, in 2008, 9% of all Peel Police street check forms had race not recorded. 2009, 13% were blank for race. 2010, 15%, 2011, 15%. Then in 2012, Chief Metcalf retires, and Deputy Chief Teslaff is interim chief. 2012 has 18% blank for race. 2013 represents Chief Evans' first full year as chief, and the dramatic happens. Blank race data doubles from 2012's 18% to 36% in 2013. Astonishingly, by 2014, blank race data is 47% of all Peel Police street check forms. In a September 24, 2015 email, that's less than 24 hours before the street check report to the board, Freedom of Information confirms that criminal intelligence analyst Raphael DeGibetti informed Inspector Ingrid Berkeley-Brown, author of the board report, that blank race data had already hit 48% for 2015. Just shy of 50% of all street check forms in 2014 and 2015 had race not recorded. That's 13,567 of 28,660 PRP-17s. How does almost half blank 2 years in a row escape unreported to the board, who had directed the chief to provide, quote, a full review of street checking practices by the Peel Regional Police, unquote. So in 2015, because Peel Police uses its bumper crop of 48% blank race forms in its calculations, the percent of blacks carded would come out at a low 17%, versus 32%, which would be the result if they calculated it using the York University Research Team method for the Ottawa Police Traffic Stop Race Data Collection Project, that is, by not including forms where race was not included. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that if a police force includes blank race data in their race calculations, the greater the percent of blank street check forms, the lower the percent of the real races. So, to review, Peel Police blank race street check forms double in 2013 to 36%, then flirt with 50% blank race in 2014 and 2015. Then Freedom of Information shows that on September 15, 2015, again, just days before the street check report is presented to the board, Berkeley-Brown et al. Rebrand their, quote, blank race data to, quote, no race, instead of no race data, for reasons that were successful. At the end of my September 2016 deputation, I urged that the Peel Police Services Board direct Peel Regional Police to provide all data used in the preparation of analysis of street checks 2009 to 2014. That was the PowerPoint presentation. And street checks process, that was the written view that you would have had. And I closed my January 2017 deputation with, finally, I'd like to remind the board that carding has a profound impact on the black community. Recall that for Patrol Zone 21130 Malton, 51.4% of those carded from 2009 to 2014 were black. And that statistic was withheld from the black community and the board. And then I continued, I request that Peel Police provide Mayor Crombie, the board, the black community, and me with Peel Police Patrol Zone contacts by race, as I detailed earlier, by Wednesday, February 15th, 2017. Well, it's now March the 24th and nothing. So, retrospective analysis of video shot at the October 13th, 2015 Malton Street Check Public Consultation Meeting records Peel Police Chief Evans saying, and this is a video transcript, the officers are placed at the tables to answer questions. Anytime, please. I want you to feel free to ask any questions, and at the end of the night, I'm going to be answering questions, unquote. Video shows Inspector Ingrid Berkeley-Brown, author of Analysis of Street Checks 2009 to 2014, and who Chief Evans referred to correctly as keeper of the records, was placed at a table. Printed on the chart paper behind her was a request from the all-black group. Quote, "Be more transparent on the real numbers," unquote. I submit that Brown had a moral obligation to have formed her Malton table on the real numbers. That for Patrol Zone 21130, Malton, 51.4% of those carded from 2009 to 2014 were black, and that since 51% is an average, some years will be less, some more. She didn't, however. When I didn't hear back from the board, I filed Freedom of Information for all the Peel Police Street Check Patrol Zone data that I had requested in my January deputation. In its March 2nd, 2017 Freedom of Information response letter, Peel Police informed me that my FOI Patrol Zone race stat request, that's for adults and for those under 18, took them 8 hours and is charging me $240. Since a participant at Inspector Berkeley Brown's table requested the real numbers, and that Chief Evans began that street check public meeting with, the officers are placed at the table to answer questions. This patrol zone data should not only be free, but should have been provided as part of an appendix in the full review that the 2015 board had directed and never got. I draw your attention to the executive summary for the October 24th, 2016 Ottawa Police Services Traffic Stop Race Data Collection Project. In it, the York research team, I'm almost done. In it, the York research team made this recommendation to the Ottawa Police Services Board regarding raw data, quote, "Make readily available the data collected for this research project on race and traffic stops. The raw data made available should allow for analysis that goes beyond the scope and methodology of the report, but within the legal limits of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act and the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act," unquote. And Ottawa does, they do. All the Ottawa Police traffic stop raw data and study data are accessible online. Good on them. So, and now I am wrapping up. So, in the course of the Brampton, Mississauga Street Check public consultations, several people asked for the real numbers. I'm requesting that the Peel Police Services Board direct Peel Police to release the FOI Patrol Zone race stats currently held at 22 Division. Failing that, given that I volunteered to provide the board with a full review of street checking practices by the Peel Regional Police, I ask that you at least go 50-50 with me on the Freedom of Information requests, or the costs. But last, if you don't, that's fine. I'm heading to 22 Division, straight from here, and will pay all $240. Apparently no one has ever seen Peel Police carding youth data by race before, let alone analyzed it. So thanks for listening.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any questions or comments?
Thank you. Oh, I'm going to turn this off.
I'll move receiving the deputation.
Okay, Chair Dale, seconded by Norman Nicholson. All in favor? Deputation accepted. Chief?
Raf, how long have you been with the police service now?
17 years.
So maybe you can assist, because say, and I'm asking you a question, and you know the whole danger of asking a question you don't know the answer to. I know the answer, I just know you're not prepared for this question. Earlier today, you saw a presentation by Ms. Cooper Bennett, and somehow I was feeling it was implied that when I became chief, I ordered a different way of doing street checks so we could then mask or hide the race data. Is that true?
Definitely not.
Okay.
I mean, we do have issues with collecting race data. Sometimes the PRP contact cards are not meant for persons. They could be bags found
at the airport, the luggage?
At the airport, which may sometimes raise some alert as to what it's containing in it, and that's not a person data.
When did we change, and I'm not sure you'll know, or maybe Mick or Oscar may know, when did we go from a paper-based process, the officers would fill out a paper-based card, to something that was online in their cruisers, it was electronic? Was that around the same time I became chief?
Exactly. I think that's around the time that you became the chief when we decided to move from paperwork to electronic capturing.
And thank you. And at some point, we discovered that the race was on the second page for the overlay instead of the officers would fill out the names.
Yes.
Am I correct? And when we identified that, we corrected that?
Exactly.
You corrected that, I didn't.
Exactly. I did that because on the second page, and sometimes that is not get captured. So we decided to have that rectified, to have it on the front page for the officers to enter that piece of information.
And we're officers of the belief that if I entered in the name John Smith, and I knew John Smith was a regular being entered into the system and was on the system already for previous crimes, we're officers under the belief that the data would automatically update the race, that the system would do it instead of them having to manually press
And that's correct. In the past, what we have is officers have the notion that so far as the person's name is on the system, the race or other descriptors will roll over with it. And sometimes we do have system hiccups, and when that happens, it doesn't roll up. And that may explain high number of no race data. And since then, I have personally get involved to make sure that all these issues is being rectified and that we improved the number of race information that we have in our system.
And one final one. When we were first starting, when I signed now Superintendent Ingrid Berkeley-Brown, she was in Record Services at the time, to work with me on the report for the board. At no time was Ingrid Berkeley-Brown ever aware of the data, not releasing data. Were you aware of that? There was a comment made that somehow that she was misleading the public on that. Absolutely.
No, absolutely not.
Any corrections that she was actually seeking information from you on how the system worked?
Exactly.
And trying to make it more transparent?
Exactly. I work with Superintendent Ingrid directly on that. She was getting in touch with me for any information on that, and we noticed issues and we're trying to work on that. So basically, at no point in time that we've ever had anything to do with in terms of how this information is getting out. But basically, it's based on what we have in the system, and I work with her on that to get that out.
And the requests for information that come in through the Freedom of Information Act. So we then, the Record Services or the FOI office, I guess, send that information to you, and you or someone in your office, Oscar, prepares the data, and then there's a bill assigned to because of the hours spent on preparing the data. Is that correct?
Exactly. The directives require me to be the one to handle off FOI request. So when a FOI request comes through the privacy unit, it gets sent to me directly. And I have to work on that, or give some of my staff to work on that, and goes to me for approval before it gets disseminated to the requester.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I know I just wanted to clarify the earlier presentation while we had the opportunity with Raf here. Thank you.
Yeah, I have heard this. I'm aware of the fact that it was on the second page. So today, right now, what will be the unidentified race number today? Forget about the time because of the issue that you mentioned.
Good question, Chair.
Yeah.
What would it be now?
Because right now, I'll say that it's part of the provincial mandate that we cannot have access to street check data without the chief's approval. So I cannot go back now to
Right now, so, sorry, Raf, I think you misunderstand. Right now, it's mandatory, the officers have to fill in that race field.
Oh,
We
yes,
made that
definitely.
mandatory?
Yes.
0%?
Yes.
Yeah, it should be 0%. Yes.
When did we change that? Do you recall when we made it mandatory, that when we realized there was an issue?
Yes, I think right after we did that, you made that presentation at the Police Service Board on
So
the
September
street check process,
2015?
September 25th, right after that.
Then we made it mandatory.
We made it mandatory.
And it's system generated mandatory, so the officer, it'll get rejected back if it's not included in there, so.
How long has
That meaning, in fact, how many months or weeks?
I would say roughly from late 2015 to now, so I'm trying to look at roughly 16, 17 months.
So next time when we see a report, it will reflect that.
Exactly, it will reflect that.
Okay, thank you. Madam Jeffrey, you had a comment or a question?
So when a board says, wow, that means they're overwhelmed. You gave us a lot of data. So I'm trying to think from a very practical perspective of, obviously, I'm not the person who's going to be dealing with the crime mapping and the analytics on a day-to-day basis, but as a mayor or as local councilors, we often look at traffic analytics. you've got some analytics here. Are you sharing them with local municipalities? Because at the end of the day, that design, whether it's a regional or a municipal or a provincial road, if fatalities are happening, there may be something wrong with the design. So I'm hoping that there's some connectivity between, because it's good to have the data, but what do you do with it? So do you have those conversations with our local jurisdictions?
I think we have those conversations with the regional road safety office, and that's some of the responsibility of the officers to really engage the city and the municipality in terms of the engineering department as to how we can include such recommendation into any engineering work on road safety. And sometimes even traffic light could be seen as something as to handling traffic flow, but it may in fact be contributing toward road accidents.
So we do sit on the committees to do that. So RAF prepares the data, and the Road Safety Services Inspector would sit on the committee and share the data with your teams.
So I think sometimes these things come to committees and people don't connect the dots, the dots that you're providing to us.
Okay.
I think this would be a very worthy exercise to go to each municipality and kind of present this so that the local council know and the public have a better sense of what you're doing. I mean, the crime statistics, that's the job of the police and obviously the board as a whole, but the traffic fatality piece of it is very labor intensive for boards and certainly for police as well as municipalities. And if we can prevent even one fatality because we've redesigned or retimed lights, to me that's worth its weight in gold. So I'm just wondering if I could ask you to make some plans to come and present to council so that we understand better collectively how we can use this data to make our cities safer from a very practical perspective.
I can follow up and make that arrangements. I know last year the Road Safety Services, and I reached out to Janice Baker in Mississauga and Harry Schlang in Brampton and Vision Zero, because last year we lost 40 citizens to traffic fatalities. That's the highest number we've ever seen. So, but the data that they use in the geomapping, I would love to that and love to present on. I think you're right. We need to have those discussions.
I think it would be really useful. I just try to, what do you do with it? Like, it's great to see, but I guess I want to get something done about it. And I think that's a really practical thing that all of us understand on a day-to-day basis. The other stuff is, obviously, this is a very fast-moving market with all the data that you have coming in and how you interpret it and how you connect the dots. But traffic is something that I think we all understand, and I'm interested in finding ways to make my city safer. So thank you. This is very interesting.
We'll do that.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I got one question. I'm really intrigued with the predictive application of all this thing. That's where the big mileage is going to come from when you predict various crime, various accidents with all the factors. So how advanced is your algorithm developed where it becomes an everyday tool of tremendous use for deploying resources and allocating different services?
Well, the tool, the algorithms are being developed over time and is being tested based on data. Basically, the more data we have, the more better the better the algorithm will become. So it's a moving target, and it's really improving as time goes on. And it's quite sophisticated to the point that it helps with the officer's deployment as to where the areas of concern are in terms of traffic. So of course, there's room for improvement, and we continue to improve as we go along, as we add more data variables, such as the weather, the engineering work, traffic, and other information that is outside our police boundaries. Basically, social and economic data as well plays part in that.
Well, thank you very much, gentlemen. Appreciate you coming in. And as you heard, now Sue McFadden has one more comment.
No, I said
Okay. You could, no problem. Okay. Moved by Sue McFadden. Seconded by Linda Jeffrey. All in favor? Motion carried. Again, gentlemen, thank you so much, and we're very appreciative of the work you're doing and how it is helping the police.
Okay, welcome back, Ms. Cooper Bennett. I understand you have a video to show, so please proceed. And the new procedure policy is 5 minutes. I understand you've been informed of that.
Yeah, it turns out to be 5:29, and if you want to cut it at 5 minutes, that's fine.
I think we can live at 29 seconds.
Yeah.
So go ahead, we will not cut you off. It's 5:29, no problem.
The only other thing is, I just want to say it's too bad that a citizen has to use video in order to be believed, and maybe not even that. But anyway, thank you. This will be fast, since you've now cut public deputations from the 10 minutes the board allowed for decades to just 5. To begin, Peel Police Chief Evans to Peel Regional Council on June 23, 2016. Regarding Peel Police caught lying in court, Chief Evans said,
There was a lot of issues going on in our court with our officers' testimony and all that, so we created a Proud to be Peel campaign and a strategy aimed at educating our own employees so that they could make sound and informed decisions, recognizing that every bad decision made by an employee impacts the brand.
Regarding street checks, aka carding, she stated,
The negative press that Peel Police are getting is hurting the brand name.
With that in mind, I want to address the question and answer session protecting the Peel Police brand between Chief Evans and Dr. Raphael Djibati, which lampooned my March 24th deputation after I had left, and the board clearly believing them instead of me. Your new limitation means I can only deal briefly with just 2 of the Chief's questions. First question, Chief Evans to Dr. Djibati.
And I'm asking you a question, and you know the whole danger of asking a question you don't know the answer to. I know the answer, I just know you're not prepared for this question. Earlier today, you saw a presentation by Ms. Cooper Bennett, and somehow I was feeling it was implied that when I became chief, I ordered a different way of doing street checks so we could then mask or hide the race data. Is that true?
Definitely not.
Okay.
My Freedom of Information agrees no to the Chief's 3 caveats. When I became chief, I ordered, and different way of doing street checks. However, for the chief's wording mask or hide the race data, Freedom of Information confirms that it's actually mask, hide, and doctor the race data. First example, hide. I filed Freedom of Information requesting all records relating to the Evans-Berkeley-Brown September 2015 street check presentation to the board. The Peel Police response letter stated, quote, after careful review, a decision has been made to deny the release of information contained in all records requested, unquote. You can't brand protect hide deeper than denying all records. Second example, hide. FOI confirmed the existence of an October 24, 2014 35-page email and board report entitled Street Check Board Report that Chief Evans hid from the board, which included both Brampton and Mississauga mayors, and is still hiding from you. And to deal with your other question, I assume the Chief's earlier comment
I know the answer
also applies. Chief Evans asked Dr. Djibati a leading question.
At no time was Ingrid Berkeley-Brown ever aware of the data, not releasing data. Were you aware of that? There was a comment made that somehow that she was misleading the public on that. Absolutely.
No, absolutely not.
Freedom of Information confirms not only absolutely yes, but that Dr. Djibati himself did not release data and also misled the public. There are examples of how various drafts of the PowerPoint presentation to the board had the most important race data, charts, and graphs removed or reworked beyond recognition, at the direction of Sheila Doyle, Certified Law Enforcement Planner, Supervisor, Corporate Planning and Research, and how key data that Dr. Djibati shared in emails was not included at all. During her questioning of Dr. Djibati, Chief Evans confirmed that he worked on my Freedom of Information race data request, so his eyeballs would have seen the same numbers mine did. Given that Djibati Berkeley-Brown worked on the PowerPoint board report right up to September 24th, 10:04 a.m., he could have easily included the FOI raw race data. He chose not to. A far more compelling example of Dr. Djibati and Berkeley-Brown race data misleading the public is quite funny and relates to their 20.7% black street check average that they and Chief Evans presented to the board. Evans, Djibouti insist, and on March 24th, the board agreed that race divided by total street checks equals average 20.7% black people carded from 2009 through 2014. Fine. So why did Evans, Berkeley, Brown, Djibouti not report the Peel Police steady, significant downward street check trend of 2009, 24.3% black, 2010, 22.9%, 2011, 22.3%, 2012, 20.7%, 2013, 17.3% black, and the arithmetically miraculous 15.1% black for 2014. I submit that Dr. Raphael Djibouti, quote, a holder of a PhD from the University of Toronto specializing in spatial data analysis, who pioneered a number of initiatives in integration of technology and law enforcement, not reporting this street check success story is just incomprehensible. Incomprehensible, that is, unless you know that race divided by total street checks does not equal the real percent of those carded by Peel Police. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cooper-Bennett. Thank you, Ms. Cooper-Bennett. Board, any questions or comments you have?
Turning camera.
Chief, do you have any questions or comments? Thank you very much, Ms. Cooper-Bennett.
Thank you, sir. Good morning. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't make this less than 8 minutes. So instead of telling me that 1 minute is over and interrupting, it's important that I have the flow. Just stop me when you want me to stop, okay? Is that okay? I'm just going to try to read it as fast as humanly possible. In my September 2016 deputation, I alerted this board with, quote, it is both alarming and damning that former Chair Williamson's best police service in the world with the best officers would need mandatory requirements to monitor street checks in order to proactively detect for early signs of policing bias and anti-black racism in particular, unquote. Less than 2 weeks later, October 5th, 2016, the Meadowville Community Center hosted an independent police oversight review public meeting. At the end, Chair Alawalia addressed Justice Tulloch and those present, which included family of Jermaine Carby with, quote, I can assure you we are, myself and my colleagues on the board are very, and so is the Chief, is very committed to move forward. And listening to you here, as I think this is probably the fourth or fifth session like this I've listened to in the last 6 months, and our heart goes out to the people who have suffered. All I can assure you is that we are working, we are listening, and we are moving forward and make our deliberation more open, unquote. That's 2 I can assure yous in 1 paragraph. And I can assure you that this board can't assure the public of anything unless you're following freedom of information on Peel Regional Police. My next deputation was January 23rd, 2017, and I told this board, quote, finally, I'd like to remind the board that carding has a profound impact on the black community. Recall that Patrol Zone 21130 Malton, 51.4% of those carded from 2009 to 2014 were black, and that statistic was held from the black community and the board. And let's face it, Peel Police never once considered that these Freedom of Information records are a black history, the history of the black community in Peel, unquote. Ironically, at the same January 23, 2017 meeting, the board approved its anti-racism and ethno-cultural equity policy, which trumpets, quote, the board is committed to ensuring the Peel Regional Police will provide services and partnerships with all the communities of the region in a way that is equitable, respectful, and inclusive, unquote. March 2017, I alerted this board that Freedom of Information revealed that Quote, just shy of 50% of all street check forms in 2014 and 2015 had race not recorded. That's 13,567 of 28,660 PRP 17s. How does almost half blank 2 years in a row escape unreported to the board, who had directed the chief to provide a full review of street checking practices by the Peel Regional Police, unquote. Stunningly, after my deputation in front of this board, Peel Police Chief Evans and Dr. Raphael Djibati lampooned what I just reported Freedom of Information revealed about PRP doctoring and hiding of street check race statistics. There can be no clearer window into the Peel Police public complaints process than the March 2017 Evans Djibati Q&A denials that this board accepted as truth. On March 30th, I got an email from Ms. Lorena Perkins advising me that the board was now applying a tourniquet to public deputations. She wrote, quote, I am responding to your request for a deputation at the April 28th, 2017 board meeting. I'd like to inform you that at the March 24th, 2017 meeting, the board approved a new procedures policy to move deputations to 5 minutes, and that takes effect for the April meeting, unquote. Chair Aliwalia's, our heart goes out to the people who have suffered, and all I can assure you is that we are working, we are listening, and we are moving forward, was slashed to 50% less heart just 4 board meetings after his assurances. April 28th, 2017, my 5-minute deputation, I showed that emails shared among Inspector Ingrid Berkeley-Brown, Dr. Djibati, and Sheila Doyle revealed that yes, Peel Police were hiding and doctoring their PRP 17 race statistics. I also alerted this board of something that would confirm it has no control over Peel Police. I reported to you that, quote, FOI confirmed the existence of an October 24th, 2014, 35-page email and board report entitled Street Check Board Report that Chief Evans hid from the board, which included both Brampton and Mississauga mayors, and is still hiding from you, unquote. And you did nothing, no comment, no question, zero concern. No May meeting schedule, so I signed up for the June 27th, 2017 deputation. But the board canceled that meeting, preferring to concentrate on extending the chief's contract for another 2 years. When I learned the cancellation, I responded to Mr. Cirkley on June 15th, 2017 with, quote, I asked them that you please share this with Chair Aliwalia and Vice Chair Nicholson. I request an audience with them and or any member or members of the Peel Police Services Board committed to addressing the systemic issues currently plaguing Peel Police as revealed through Freedom of Information, unquote. No interest, nothing, not from the chair, not from the vice chair, not from any member of the board. For the record, on July 31st, 2017, the Information and Privacy Commission finally decided on my first formal appeal. The adjudicator ruled favorably on the same evidence that I presented to this board and that you chose to ignore. Order, I'm going to just do the highlights. Order MO, in this way you're interrupting the commissioner, not me. Order MO 3476, Peel Police Services Board, quote, 81, the applicant, that's me.
Madam, I have to ask you to close,
That's fine, great.
5 minutes, and I think we have to keep a level playing field for everybody, and so I'm sorry if you're not finished. Maybe at a future time you can come in and finish if you so like. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Any questions or comments on this presentation? Okay, need a motion to accept this presentation. Fadden, seconded by Noel Nicholson. All in favor? Can you repeat what you just said?
Yeah, I've practiced this dozens of times, and it'll be about 5 minutes, 15 seconds. But I'm reading it really fast. I don't know if you're going to...
5:15, sure.
Okay. In my January 2017 deputation, I informed this board that Peel Police kept blocking my street check for related Freedom of Information requests and forcing me into appeal after appeal to the Information and Privacy Commissioner. And boy, did you people ever fool me. I didn't know until mid-October when I received yet another Freedom of Information access denied, this time slapped with a frivolous and vexatious claim that I finally figured out it wasn't PRP blocking my street check FOIs, but the chair of this board. I now realize it was the chair and this board who delegated the chief's lawyer, Linda Bordelot, to fight my appeal and write, quote, we do not see a public interest, unquote, in 4 disputed records in a row. Well, the IPC disagreed, and quite the contrary, ruled that the records had compelling public interest. And Record 4, that secret 2014 Peel Police Street Check Board report that you showed no interest in, revealed all manner of violations of the Police Services Act, the Ontario Municipal Act, Ontario Human Rights Code, Peel Police directives, policies, and code of conduct, not to mention board adequacy standard policies, for example, management of police records. By far, the most profound violation revealed in your secret 2014 Peel Police Street Check Board report relates to records retention of street checks, PRP 17s. On page 16, under the heading Records Retention, the secret 2014 report states, quote, there is a retention schedule for street checks and is in occurrences section number 302090101. The retention period is no charges event plus 1 year, charges event plus 5 years, V-class event plus 50 years. Niche is not subject to the retention schedule as a module is not built into the system to manage retention of records, unquote. Now contrast no charges event plus 1 year with what Chief Evans and then Inspector Ingrid Berkeley-Brown reported in September 2015. Regarding retention of PRP 17s, they wrote, quote, these records are typically retained on an indefinite basis unless statutory requirements dictate otherwise. An environmental scan with surrounding police agencies revealed that information collected through their street check processes is also retained indefinitely, unquote. I immediately filed Freedom of Information for the actual Peel Police Records Retention Schedule just to see the thing with my own eyes. Summarized from the Peel Police Record Retention Schedule for PRP 17s, page 100. Office of Primary Interest, Criminal Investigation Bureau. When charges laid, total, event plus 5 years, disposition method instructions, ERSH. When charges not laid, total event plus 1 year, disposition method instructions, ERSH. ER means erase, shred, and SH, shred. So you all did your best to keep hidden from the public that Peel Police street check forms and their related personal information were not supposed to be retained indefinitely as Evans and Berkeley-Brown claimed, but had a precise destruction schedule. For how many years has the Peel Police covert non-compliance to its PRP 17 street check retention schedule denied tens of thousands of people their right to be forgotten? The right to service of having their personal information expunged as per existing legislation. And you yourselves know what community PRP 17s affect the most. Chief Evans and Berkeley-Brown said there were 130,024 street check contacts between 2009 through 2014. Contacts. That's people carded. I have no idea how many of those 130,000 had erase rights of event plus 1 year, but can tell you that some who were charged are now past the 5-year retention and should have had their PRP information erased. Regarding the ministry's new street check regulation 5816, Chief Evans wrote, quote, Peel Regional Police will commence a process to restrict access to the legacy street check data. Unquote. You gotta love calling years of non-erased PRP 17's legacy street check data. As for will commence a process to restrict access, the majority of the chief's almost 200,000 legacy street check data should not exist. Page 10 in the 2015 street check process goes on to lie. Quote, currently there is no mandatory requirement necessitating regular review and audit of street check forms within the system, unquote. There were mandatory requirements in that Peel Police Records Retention Schedule and in the board's management of police records, which state, quote, the Chief of Police shall, B, ensure members act with full respect for human dignity, unquote, and, quote, the Chief of Police shall regularly review collection, security, retention, use, disclosure, and destruction of police records as may be required to ensure the integrity of the police service directive and or procedure, unquote. So there were mandatory requirements. That's it. I hope I did it in under 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Van Cooper. Chief or Linda Bordlow, you have any comments?
No, I have no comments, Chair.
Okay. Any comments from the board? Questions? Move the motion to receive this deputation. Sue McFadden, second by Frank Dale. All in favor? Moved. Thank you.
Comments. How can there be no comments? Wow.
And therefore be it resolved, the Peel Regional Police work closely with the Ministry of Community Safety and Correctional Services to fully disclose how the data is collected, how long it's retained,